BLSS Smuggle Slide, or BLSS, is a combination of multiple glitches that come together to allow Link to float and gain insane amounts of speed. It's super easy to set up, and it can be performed with a few items and within minutes of starting a new game. It drastically changed movement and routes of categories in this game. Record times were dropped by minutes. BTBs were made nearly obsolete because of this trick. This seems like the perfect glitch for speedrunners, but in reality, it isn't entirely amazing. BLSS both saved and destroyed Breath of the Wild at the same time. First, let's discuss how it saved the game. Prior to BLSS, Breath of the Wild was a pretty difficult speed game. Bullet time bounces, or BTBs, were the main form of long distance movement. This glitch used the bullet time physics and hitting an enemy to propel Link at fast speeds or gain a lot of height. Going into bullet time slows the game, but BTBs take advantage of that and reverse it to gain speed rather than lose it. This trick frustrated a lot of players. Most setups were fairly precise and some were even frame perfect. On top of that, it had to deal with enemies, which sucked, just like in every game. The BOGOs on the Great Plateau were especially annoying. Most BTB setups froze enemies using ice arrows, since BTBs only worked on frozen BOGOs, Moblins, and Lizalfos. Red BOGOs are the outlier because for some strange reason, they don't need to be frozen. This was useful on Plateau to skip getting ice arrows, but it also made doing the BTBs significantly harder. There were 3 used on the Plateau. Each of them manipulated the BOGOs in a way to go a certain direction, gain height, and move fast. As mentioned before, these were extremely hard. Each of them required precise manipulation of BOGOs, timing of arrow shots, shield surfing, and bullet time activation. This gave the Great Plateau a reputation for being extremely difficult and reset heavy. Immediately after the discovery of BLSS, new plateau routes were tested until we came up with the current one that is ran today. The route went from 3 BTBs to 0. BLSS completely changed the order we went to the shrines and the movement we did. Instead of doing BTBs to quickly reach the shrines, we did a BLSS. These were quick to set up and more versatile. No BOGOs were needed, so they could be done anywhere. Messing it up loses only a few seconds compared to the half a minute or more BTBs lost. And the best part, this route is significantly faster. Load times that were much harder to attain before were being obtained by more runners. One of the hardest tricks was replaced with an easy free trick. This made the game much more accessible for new runners. The speedrun became much simpler and easier to learn. There's been an influx of new runners because it's so easy to get into now. I also want to touch on the use of BLSS off Plateau. Similar to the Plateau, BTBs were used to get across the whole map. These were replaced by BLSS as well. Many categories had 10 or more BTBs. The only BTBs left are ones used to gain a lot of height. These are actually optional now due to another glitch that gives hundreds of fairies, so instead you can just wind bomb, but it would be much slower. BLSS also made new routes for other categories possible too. This as well made other categories more accessible. Any percent used to have a frame perfect BTB to get to Hyrule Castle. Now we just wiggle and arrive there. The No Amiibo category had to rely on Beetle RNG for an attack up meal. Since BLSS is so versatile, we can just BLSS to some Razor Shrooms and then again to Hyrule Castle. This glitch seems like a dream come true. Add hard trick on, easy good trick replaces it. This was the case for a little while. Runners enjoyed the ease of BLSS and how it made categories they loved even easier. But that was the issue itself. The game got to a point where it was so easy that it just wasn't as fun. BTBs provided a challenge for runners. You were always on your toes preparing for the next BTB. But with BLSS, there was no scary or hard part of the run to fear. Dreading a hard BTB turned into waiting for a mundane BLSS. Rather than finding a place with an enemy to BTB off of, we just got to a high point on the map and did a BLSS over any obstacles. The wiggling for BLSS gets very repetitive very quickly. You can only move the control stick left and right over and over again so many times before getting bored. Also, there's this thing called a lag. Breath of the Wild and lag are synonymous. During the BLSS, the game is almost a slideshow. Half the time you are doing the BLSS, you're waiting for the game to load. BLSS isn't anywhere near satisfying to perform. A clean wind bomb or BTB feels so good to do. Even if you get a few loads, it doesn't matter because you're celebrating a hard trick. BLSS does not have that same feel to it. The incorporation of BLSS led to the removal of wind bombs in addition to BTBs. BTBs are both loved and hated, but overall wind bombs are loved. BTBs were the long distance movement tech, but wind bombs were the short distance tech. While wind bombs are still used a lot, they are not as common as before. If a distance is barely too far for one wind bomb, a BLSS is used. If a certain win bot is too hard for some runners, they will just BLSS. Why do a cool glitch if you can just wiggle, right? Even stasis bounces are gone. They're an extremely niche trick that was never used too much, but those are gone too. Ultimately, sometimes it feels like BLSS leached onto Breath of the Wild and sucked the fun out of it. I said earlier that there was a flood of new runners since the game is much easier to run. What I didn't mention was that the number of active runners before BLSS dropped significantly after BLSS. Within months after BLSS was found, some runners slowly stopped running the game. The monotony of BLSS bored runners and strayed them away from the game. Whether BLSS saved the game or led to its downfall is subjective. There is clear evidence for both sides, but no correct opinion. Breath of the Wild still has an active speedrunning community for now. Whether it will stay that way, only time will tell. That is the end of my BLSS rant. It has definitely changed Breath of the Wild forever. Maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way. If you want to see BLSS or other speedrunning content, be sure to check out my Twitch channel. Thank you for watching. See ya.